Welcome to the Barker Character Comic and Cartoon Museum in Cheshire, Connecticut. Herb and Gloria Barker invite you to take a brief tour through one of the largest toy collections in the country. This is a unique collection of childhood artifacts that spans over 14 decades of American history. Herb and Gloria have a deep respect for the past. They believe it should be preserved and valued as our stories help to explain who we were and where we're headed. On September 12, 1997, all of Cheshire helped celebrate the grand opening of the Barker Character Comic and Cartoon Museum. Hundreds of thousands of people from all around the world have visited since that day. Gloria hopes that this collection will serve as an inspiration to children, demonstrating that even the smallest item has value and beauty. But quite often parents and grandparents too discover that it triggers long-forgotten memories. Now, this is just a quick look at some of the highlights of the collection, starting with the newest items and working our way back to the oldest toys, which were manufactured just after the Civil War. Of course, many characters are so well conceived that they span the generations. Batman's most recent appearance was in The Dark Knight, but he made his comic book debut in 1939. Lord of the Rings was written mostly during World War II, but was brilliantly brought to the screen in 2001 by Peter Jackson. This case was viewed by visitors from New Zealand, who had actually worked as extras in the films, wearing very hot and ugly orc costumes. Though our focus is on American characters, we had to include a Harry Potter collection for all the young readers who come for a visit. The rubber ducky may not be an American invention, but our Celebriducks are. We are the official Celebriduck Museum, dedicated to putting an end to mediocre bathing. Michael Myers said he never knew how ugly he was until he saw his Austin Powers doll in 1997. He's much cuter than that, but the character that he played did not possess the swoon factor of his 1960s predecessors, James Bond and Ilya Kuryakin. In 1993, a cartoon called The Mighty Morphin Power Rangers was adapted from a Japanese series. Thanks to the Barbie pink suit, we know that at least one of them was a woman. 1987 saw the Marvin Gaye hit song, I Heard It Through the Grapevine, morph into the theme song of a quartet of singing dancing raisins. The California Raisins ruled the commercial airwaves for 10 years, selling a lot of raisin-related merchandise. The film Pee-wee's Big Adventure was directed by Tim Burton in 1985. It was his first major movie, and he asked a singer-songwriter from the rock group Oingo Boingo to provide the score. That was the start of a lifelong partnership between Burton and Danny Elfman. Burton and Elfman went on to create the musical The Nightmare Before Christmas in 1993. Besides writing the score, Elfman provided Jack Skellington's singing voice. Sally's voice was that of Catherine O'Hara, who played a folk singer in the Christopher Guest film A Mighty Wind. Who would have imagined in 1987 that The Simpsons would still be going strong 20 years later? And their theme song was written by Danny Elfman. The Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles first appeared in comic books in 1984, then in animated cartoons in 1987. They lived in the sewers of Manhattan and gave the world that ultimate weapon, the pizza shooter. An incredibly talented young artist named Dave Stevens created the comic book character the Rocketeer in 1982 as an homage to the pulp fiction heroes of the 30s. Disney made it into an excellent movie in 1991. In 1981, Mattel created a cartoon just to merchandise a line of action heroes. To address charges of crass commercialism, they began adding a life lesson at the end of each episode. When Jim Henson took us to Sesame Street in 1969, he taught us all lessons in creativity. His show has won 109 Emmy Awards, more than any other TV series in history. The Smurfs started life in a French film titled The Smurfs and the Magic Flute in 1976. They came to American TV in 1981, and a good percentage of American adults have a shoebox full of Smurf figures stashed somewhere in their homes. Back in 1978, Jim Davis used memories of his cranky old grandfather to create a smart aleck cat named Garfield. Garfield has also been merchandised on a grand scale, but Davis hasn't burdened him with life lessons. Another marketing giant is the Star Wars franchise. Released in 1977, it was one of the first films to use computer-generated special effects. The series quickly became a cultural icon, introducing the phrase, the evil empire, to the world. Another iconic sci-fi show was actually noted for its cheesy effects. Star Trek never completed its original 5-year mission, begun in 1969, but it went on to become the cult classic that wouldn't die. The action figures it inspired look quite like the original cast, right down to Spock's little pointed ears. Marvel Comics introduced its first X-Men comic in 1963, after the 1962 debut of The Incredible Hulk. The characters have continued saving or destroying the world in TV shows and films ever since. The animation team of William Hanna and Joseph Barbera produced most of the great cartoons of the 60s. The Flintstones was the first primetime cartoon series aimed at an adult audience. The character Fred was a blatant takeoff of Jackie Gleason in The Honeymooners. Yogi Bear was another Honeymooners knockoff, borrowing Art Carney's character Ed Norton. Another Hanna-Barbera adult cartoon, The Jetsons, aired in prime time in 1962. It reflected the country's interest in rockets and flying saucers, which had intensified during the space race with Russia that began 5 years earlier. Another favorite of the early 60s and late 50s was the monster movie. In the early years of special effects, monsters were either clumsily enlarged nature shots, men acting spastic in rubber suits, or stop motion photography. The stop motion technique was perfected by the great Ray Harryhausen, who animated monsters for many live action films. The artists of Pixar paid tribute to him in Monsters, Inc. by naming the restaurant in an early scene Harryhausen's. The stop motion technique was used by Art Clokey to produce his series of Gumby films. We are fortunate to have many of the original clay models that he used to make those films. Gumby made his television debut in 1956 on The Howdy Doody Show. It was howdy doody time for American kids from 1947 until 1960. The marionette's name was taken from the Western greeting, howdy do. Buffalo Bob Smith was the human host as well as the voice of the puppet Howdy Doody. Howdy was a huge star and even had a stand-in named Double Duty. A spin-off show in Canada in 1954 used an exact duplicate for Howdy, but featured William Shatner as Ranger Bob with James Doohan as Timber Tom. Charles Schulz's brilliant strip Peanuts ran from 1950 to 2000. He always disliked the name Peanuts, preferring his own choice of Little Folks. He kept total artistic control of his strip and the character merchandise, so the name Peanuts rarely appears on any of it. These international Snoopies were included in Happy Meals only in Asian countries, and they were a gift to the museum from a friend who had collected them in Japan. Pez dispensers came to the U.S. from Austria in 1952, but couldn't get ahead until 1955. Once they began sporting their little plastic cartoon heads and added fruit flavors to the candy, they became favorites of collectors everywhere. Another cultural phenomenon that took hold in the early 50s was the character lunchbox. Once companies began decorating the plain metal boxes with popular cowboys, TV personalities, and spacemen, sales rocketed. Hopalong Cassidy was the first character to have his own lunchbox in 1950, followed in 1953 by Roy Rogers and Dale Evans. Western radio shows, film serials, and TV shows were all the rage in the 40s, 50s, and into the 60s before the doctors and secret agents took over. Another hero of the World War II era was Superman. He was first created in 1932 and sold to DC Comics, but his popularity hasn't wavered since, as he's appeared in print, on the radio, in films, and on several TV series. Spider-Man came along 30 years later in 1962. He was the first teenage superhero without an adult mentor to guide him. Radio was the path to stardom in the 30s and 40s. One rather unlikely performer to follow that path was a ventriloquist named Edgar Bergen. He and his dummy, Charlie McCarthy, were the stars of the weekly Chase and Sanborn Hour radio show. Hugely popular, they went on to star in films and on TV where you could see Bergen's lips move. Another star of radio newspapers was Little Orphan Annie with her dog Sandy. The comic strip first appeared in 1924, with a radio show to follow in 1930. The strip by Harold Gray was peopled with dark, scary characters and situations that were so realistically written that people often wrote to the newspaper to warn Annie to watch out. Another adventurous female from the 30s was Betty Boop. She started life as a French poodle in the 1930 film Dizzy Dishes, but quickly evolved into a human jazz baby sporting miniskirt and thigh garter. She was the creation of Max and Dave Fleischer, pioneers in cartoon animation. But in 1934, the Hays Office of Morality made her lengthen their skirts and ditch her doggy boyfriend Bimbo. She adopted the cute little pet Pudgy and gave up the topless hula dancing, for a while at least. Betty played a cameo in the 1933 cartoon introducing Popeye the Sailor to the animated film world. He had dropped into the Thimble Theater cartoon strip in 1929 to row a boat for Olive Oyl and her boyfriend Ham Gravy. But he quickly inspired Olive to ditch the ham, and he became everyone else's favorite character too. He caught the eye of Max Fleischer, who starred him in films until 1957. These cartoons have been in reruns ever since, often in a colorized version. The Fleischer Studios' main rival for animated films in the 30s was the young cartoonist Walt Disney. He designed a popular character named Oswald the Lucky Rabbit in 1927, but lost the rights to him. So in 1928, a Disney cartoon titled Plane Crazy starred his most popular character, Mickey Mouse. Mickey's adventurous personality was modeled after Charles Lindbergh, whose solo flight the previous year had inspired Disney. Walt is rumored to have chosen the name Mortimer for his mouse, but his wife Lillian thought that sounded too snooty. It goes to show that behind every great rodent there is a good woman. But it was Mickey's third film, Steamboat Willie, his first cartoon with synchronized sound, which made him a household name. Disney produced many more Mickey films in quick succession, and recognizing his potential, produced a vast quantity of character merchandise. Mickey was the first cartoon character to appear on a watch. These were manufactured by the Ingersoll Company of Waterbury, Connecticut in the early 30s. We also have an item which is rarely seen, a tube of 1930s Mickey Mouse toothpaste with its original box. Not many people thought to save their favorite toothpaste. Disney risked everything to produce the first feature-length animated cartoon aimed at kids and adults alike. Snow White was released in 1937 at a cost of $1.4 million. The high quality of the film's production brought audiences out in droves, to the surprise of the reluctant theater owners. They had predicted that Disney would lose his shirt, but not only did he keep that, but at the next Academy Awards ceremony, he scooped up one full-sized Oscar plus 7 little ones. Last but not least, these are twin elephant ramp walkers from 1873. They are the oldest toys in the museum, powered entirely by gravity. These are made of cast iron, but over the years the basic design remained unchanged as they were produced in wood, composition, and then plastic. Their simplicity made them inexpensive to buy and fun to operate, and their popularity lasted right up to the video game era. These are the best kinds of toys, and this is one of the last places to see them. So come any Saturday and see the other 70,000 items we have on display. You're bound to meet some old friends here, right? For more information, visit our website at www.barkermuseum.com.